There's a problem with this industry, and there's these 3 words. In 5 seconds. 3 words, obfuscated by static that forever forged themselves into my psyche. Visions of chaos peeking through malfunctioning digital obscurity, anticipation builds. Something was coming. Those 3 words. Something deeply important, new, powerful. Yeah, okay, it's just the Battlefield 3 teaser. But it's representative of something more. 3 words. They still, 12 years later, light something up in me, deep in my chest that build from tension, anticipation. It's something that I, and I think many others, haven't quite ever come down from. There's a problem with this industry. But not just with the industry itself, but the way that we've come to digest, interpret, and respond to media. And I think that things are already changing. Emblematic of a shift not only surrounding interactive entertainment, but all entertainment. Of our society, and the way that we understand the art which reflects it. Modern gaming. It's a term characterized by a bitter aftertaste. Look those words up on Google in a YouTube search and you're likely to come away with a sentiment of distaste. Modern gaming isn't the same anymore. The issue with modern gaming sucks. Things along those lines. Maybe you connected with this sentiment because it touches that feeling that you've had in the back of your mind for years. Not that gaming is bad, but that you just aren't getting that feeling anymore. But what changed? Is the gaming industry really that different? Are games worse? Or is that really even where the problem lies? That feeling of true hype, when was the last time that you felt it? Unbridled, relenting, that excitement for something to come without hesitation, without fear, without uncertainty, that feeling of, God damn, I cannot wait for this game to come out. The point I want to make here is, while people are still excited about games, there's this shift that has taken place. The word hype no longer represents a shared joy, a jubilation over a favorite collective interest. These days, the word hype is often associated with another: disappointment. That sentiment of the problem with modern gaming, this is tied directly into this death of true hype over games. Many of us out there feel like we've been burned too many times. That every time we let ourselves get excited, our excitement allows us to be taken advantage of. We've become really critical, not just as individual gamers, as a society of gamers, a society where gaming is the most lucrative subset of entertainment media, period. And I think, and I'm not the only one thinking this, a bubble is about to burst. A bubble that's been forming since sometime around 2011, since I first heard those 3 words. But were the old days really as good as we remember? Do we really have the right to be as critical, as hesitant, and distrusting as we are? To attempt to answer that, let's look at what was going on back in 2011, at how things have changed, and if things were really as good for AAA FPS fans as we remember in comparison. But real quick before that, speaking of disappointment, something that is not disappointing to me is the response to my videos recently. You guys have shown me such kindness, and I really appreciate all the new voices in the comments. You all killed it with my last call to action. You dropped the not subscribed percentage down under 92%. I'm not gonna lie, it does not actually bother me in the slightest that people who aren't subbed are watching. That's actually a really good sign. But if you have been enjoying the content and want to make sure that you don't miss out on more like it in the future, you all know this. You've heard every doofus YouTuber say it 1,000 times, you know what I'm asking. Anyway, with the cringe segment out of the way, back to the video. Let's really carry our minds back in time for a moment here to that peak era, in quotations. I'm sort of saying this arbitrarily because, let's be honest, everyone's peak is different. A wise man once said that the time something was at its peak was whenever you happened to find out about it. But there is something to be said about the 2007 to 2012 period that almost everyone I've talked to agrees was just great. We all remember it very fondly. The expertly crafted engine of hype that the marketing team for DICE built around Battlefield 3 cannot be understated. If you weren't a teenager or young adult in 2011 when this trailer came out, I cannot in words describe to you what this game's marketing did to the world at that time. To set the stage here, the FPS genre was blowing up in a new way. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Call of Duty Black Ops set records for the highest selling media item of all time back-to-back, and gaming had officially begun to enter the mainstream in an unprecedented way. However, there was also a cultural shift in the visual tone of war media which took place around this time too. An interest in the stark, the washed-out, shaky camera realism of films like District 9 or The Hurt Locker. Not realism in the sense of actually representing anything with an attention to detail or realism in any way, but in moving away from that visual shock and awe campaign fed to us from the 90s to 2000s, a shift away from the aesthetics of war media influenced by the Second World War or Vietnam. See, Western audiences, and I'm looking at that perspective specifically because that was absolutely the intended target audience of this specific media, their perspectives had finally begun to adapt to the new aesthetic interpretations of and reflections on the post-9/11 world that they had been experiencing for the last decade. But here was the problem. The video games of the time, which so often took their stylistic and genre influences from film, had fallen into cliché, but cliché of the wrong decades. We were making games influenced by and visually responding to the wars of the Gulf, Iraq, and Afghanistan, but warped through this lens of war media from the 70s through 90s, media that itself was responding to a Western media ideal of the Second World War, Vietnam, Korea, and the Cold War. Games like Call of Duty were taking their filmic influence from Red Dawn, Full Metal Jacket, from Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, Deer Hunter, and Apocalypse Now, all the films the developers, Gen Xers in their 30s and 40s, had grown up with. And I guess it was right around this time that audiences just knew that they wanted something a little different, even if they couldn't put their finger on what that was. This isn't, of course, to say that there was no one doing media differently. And I'm not saying that these mainstream titles weren't good games. They were great and formative in their own ways. But there's a reason that Battlefield 3 made such an impression. From that first teaser trailer, we knew this was what we'd been waiting for, and we didn't even realize it. Oh yeah, by the way, speaking of history, this video is brought to you by War Thunder, the definitive land, air, and sea combat game available for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation right now. With thousands of vehicles to choose from, everything from the wood and cloth prop planes, warships, and armored cars of the early 20th century to the advanced fighters, helicopters, and MBTs of today, there are basically endless powerful machines to choose from and explore, and the detail is immaculate. Check this out. One of the aspects of War Thunder's combat that always intrigued me was the intensely detailed ballistics and damage system. When a vehicle gets hit and destroyed, the game will show you an extensive X-ray breakdown of where that shell entered and exactly what it did inside the vehicle leading to its demise. If you're not into extreme details at every turn though, the game has got you covered, offering 3 distinct modes: arcade, realistic, or simulator, each one ramping up the realism progressively. Customization, deep realism, or just straightforward, fun, large-scale combat, it's all there, something for anyone and everyone interested in the technology and battles of mechanized military history. And for a limited time, if you use my link pinned in the comments or in the video description, any new player or returning player who hasn't played for at least 6 months will get an exclusive bonus pack to start their journey off. 7 days of a premium account, premium vehicles and unique skins, 100,000 silver lions, XP boosters, and the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, and more. Thank you again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. That shaking, distorted digital video, the voice obfuscated by static, emblematic of a more raw, dangerous depiction of war, one where the dividing lines were harder to read, the conflict was blurry, far from that sterilized Hollywood view we all knew at this point was bullshit. Now, of course, this depiction was bullshit too, but the point is that filmic influence not of the war films of the 80s and 90s, but more Jarhead, more Generation Kill. It pulled things out of the realm of games for nerdy kids in their basements. These trailers were striking to mainstream audiences. While Battlefield Bad Company 2 was popular amongst PC shooter fans, it was completely unknown to your average consumer. With Battlefield 3, DICE knew that they had something special. They took aim at the greats, and they fired. People outside the Battlefield fandom took notice, people outside the gaming world took notice. Once the hook was in, they took it further. This game was going to crush the competition in ways no one could hold a candle to. Sometimes something is just so innovative, the creator can just use how ahead of the time they are as their primary ammunition. And oh, did DICE ever. The jump in graphics technology on display in Battlefield 3 is actually still staggering. The "Is it real or is it Battlefield 3" campaign was a testament to this. This stuff might look a little dated now, but let me tell you, at the time, it blew people away. Games had looked good, but they had never looked this good. People didn't even think that was possible. Remember, this was 2011. The best-selling game the year before was Call of Duty Black Ops 1. And it wasn't just the visuals, the sound, the immersion. The tone. It was inarguably something new, and DICE used everything at their disposal to get it in front of as many people as possible. That mainstream audience using Jay-Z's 99 Problems in the launch trailer. The war media audience with clear references to Jarhead and Generation Kill.
We're not thinking military, dude. See, bypassing the ambush is just what the ambushers expected us to do.
And almost most importantly, that new and incredibly key pop internet audience doing collaborations with the likes of Corridor and Freddie W. The point is, this all worked. Because we remember Battlefield 3 as one of the greatest games of the last decade. It launched careers, it changed the landscape, and it did it all without alienation, without going too far in any direction. It was fun, it was goofy, it was over the top. It was immersive, shockingly real, and stunningly grounded all at once. And gamers have been yearning for something like it to return ever since. But all I mentioned just now, all of that, was the marketing. Was the game actually that good? In general, yes, it really was a fantastic game, and it absolutely stands the test of time. You go back and play Battlefield 3 today, and it holds up surprisingly well, better in certain places than games coming out today. But at the time it came out, it wasn't without its glaring issues, and I think that many of us today fail to recognize the fundamental ways the gaming landscape has changed in the decade since those classics we all know and love so well, how it reacts to and how it criticizes media. The Battlefield 3 beta was the public's first real taste of this thing that they had been getting teased. It was a fundamental moment for many. Would this game really be all it was cracked up to be? Would it live up to the hype? Well, while the core gameplay was fun, cool, and immersive, the game certainly had its problems. First off, Operation Metro, the first taste of what people got, was not what most Battlefield fans wanted. Overall, the dumbing down of destruction compared to Battlefield Bad Company 2, the focus on infantry boots on the ground combat over combined arms vehicle gameplay. It was a step forward immersion and visuals-wise for sure, but a step backwards in actual gameplay innovation and functionality in quite a few ways. But it had that mainstream appeal. The shooting gameplay felt good, and it looked and sounded even better, and it brought people to the franchise in a way that Bad Company or the previous titles never did. Once players got a taste of Caspian Border, even the good old school Battlefield vets knew that this was, at the very least, a great Battlefield title, even if it wasn't the most Battlefield title. By catering to that mainstream appeal, giving people what they wanted, but simplifying the gameplay to something digestible by even Call of Duty fans, and then grandly raising the bar in visual and audio design, essentially by shooting for mass appeal and not only what the core fans wanted, the game as a whole actually got better. Now, this is a great oversimplification of the development process, but essentially, gaming at this time wasn't what it is today. In the 2010s, AAA studios still needed to prove themselves as a viable media product, despite how well some games were selling. These big studios, they were expanding the industry, but doing so through innovation, by creating products that were so new, so good, you just couldn't ignore them. While the beta is remembered for its goofy bugginess, the core gameplay was so interesting and new that people couldn't get enough of it. I actually believe that how utterly broken the beta was acted as a fantastic word-of-mouth factor for the spread of the game beyond that point. And by the way, when I say buggy, I don't just mean some funny visual bugs. The game was utterly broken. Players would respawn after death and possess their dead bodies, killing players halfway across the map without knowing it. You could literally just walk through the geometry underground and kill players from outside the map in many places. And yes, of course, the visual bugs. Oh, the visual bugs. But here's the thing. Here's that fundamental difference I see between the gaming world of today and way back in 2011. All I really remember from this time, the sentiment that I got, people found this fun. It was hilarious. Here was this game that was so innovative, so next generation, and yet it was just so goofy at the same time, so busted you really couldn't take it completely seriously. And that was fine, because Battlefield didn't expect you to take it completely seriously. It expected you to have fun. And people did. Battlefield 3 sales were fantastic, over 5 million copies in the first week alone. The most recently released game in the series sold less, even including refunded sales and a 10-hour demo grace period taken into consideration, neither of which the Battlefield 3 metric does. And remember, this was 2011, in an industry that every year since has grown astronomically. The game was received extremely well. People absolutely loved it. The campaign was memorable enough for its set pieces and gorgeous graphics, even if the story was rather linear, let's be honest. It was a masterpiece compared to some modern standards, but even the beloved multiplayer was rife with major issues. Server instability, the atrocious browser-based battle log system being the only way to launch the game's multiplayer matches, completely broken, and I mean literally broken weapons and attachments. As overpowered as some tactics and as janky as some of the systems and as utterly busted as some of the functionality was, people honestly loved this stuff. People loved just playing the game, creatively having fun with their friends, and that ultimate community sandbox mentality around the game, that brought it the legacy that it still holds today. Multiplayer shooter games in this period, 2007 to 2012 or so, were notoriously unbalanced. Battlefield was the rule, not the exception in that regard. But the overarching sentiment of the time was, have fun with what's there, use it to goof around with, hell, maybe even make a funny creative video or two. But people worked through the issues that were there, and doing so only knit that community together even more tightly. Before I get into it too deeply, I don't want it to come across as if I'm blaming people's residing sentiments around modern gaming on the consumer. I am not doing that by a long shot. But something has changed, and it's not all to do with the games themselves. Okay, so what is it? Well, something else launched the same year as Battlefield 3, in 2011. Something that would, forever, change the gaming space as we know it. Twitch.tv. The gaming world has exploded in ways we did and didn't expect in the little over a decade since Battlefield 3's release, and while this may be a bit of a stretch, I do think that the rise of content creation, but streaming especially, had a huge part in actually driving many of those changes, whether people realize it or not. Gaming content on the internet has existed as long as the internet itself, but how we know it now, individuals simply playing a game for others to watch, that really kicked off in 2007 to 2009 by people like Proton John and Slowbeef, pioneering the Let's Play genre.
Hey guys, Proton John here, and I've decided to try to piss myself off even more.
By the time 2011 rolled out, this had long evolved into a swath of gaming-related videos on YouTube, but the live streaming world had just kicked off, and as it did, the amount of video game content on the internet in general skyrocketed, and it has not slowed down since. More and more and more people were buying games, playing games, or even just getting interested in games. It might be hard to understand if you're younger, but in 2011, gaming wasn't everywhere yet. With the rising connectivity of online spaces due to social media, the discourse around games like Battlefield and Call of Duty were no longer relegated to comment threads in forums and chat rooms, or say, in real life, between a group of friends. Review videos, TV segments, YouTube series, podcasts, Twitch streams, social media personalities, articles, magazines. It was right at this period that talking about games rather than just playing them really took off into the stratosphere, with every format amplifying the others. And when a negative sentiment arose, well, it's safe to say that if you've been on the internet long enough, you've seen what the amplification of negative sentiment can do to a product, a person, or an idea. And this reality spares no one, no thing. When people are upset about something, they will say so. They will say so loudly, and others, spurred by that adrenaline kick of conflict, will chime in. Yeah, I feel that way too. The reality of the internet is, once a sentiment is out there, it's never going away. And chances are, by the time it's run its course, whether you agree with it or not, it will have left an irreparable effect on everything it touched. By the way, that probably made it sound like I think the internet is an entirely bad thing. That would be probably the most ironic thing someone who just gained 50,000 subscribers in less than 4 months on YouTube could possibly say. The point that I'm trying to make is many of our favorite games from a decade or so ago existed in this perfect zone, right at the apex of gaming culture's rise to the mainstream and right before the explosion of socially connected internet spaces we saw in the subsequent decade. It was a perfect storm that meant, 1, a ton of people played games like Battlefield 3, more so than ever before. 2, we all got to experience it in our own way, really enjoying it for what it was. And 3, the industry hadn't bloated itself out of proportion yet in the way that we might be seeing right about now. Yeah, the future is looking a little bit uncertain. But it takes me back to the point from the very beginning of the video. Is modern gaming really that bad? Well, that is a really, really hard question to answer, because for all of the bad that the evolution of the gaming industry has brought, I do think that we can sometimes forget the great things that have happened as a result. Firstly, that connectivity, the echo chamber, it's not all bad. The rampant rise of loot boxes, cosmetic gambling, and exploitative microtransactions that took hold in the 2010s, the internet was not happy about that stuff, and the absolute uproarious outrage at implementation in games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 taught the AAA industry that there are some things that gamers as a whole just will not stand for. The very public failures of major AAA game launches have called attention to the exploitative crunch cultures taking place at many beloved large game studios. The thing is, games have always been about business, about the bottom line. Growing up as an adult, I've come to learn that here in the good old West, basically everything is. What matters is how that business is conducted, and how what decisions the money people pulling the strings make really comes down to what we, as the consumers, the people driving that economy, decide is or isn't acceptable. Gamers in this day and age can tell when the user experience has or hasn't been prioritized, and as much as we may be sick of microtransactions and loot boxes and skin stores and early access scams, a bubble created by exploitative business always pops eventually. Unfortunately, the people who suffer the most when one of these bubbles pops, it's never the people doing the exploiting. The film Margin Call actually does a pretty good job of laying out exactly what I mean by this, but if we look at the gaming industry, I think that you all get the picture. People, coders, writers, editors, team leaders, artists, creatives, they are getting laid off all over the industry. Entire production houses are being shuttered right and left. All following one of the most profitable years for gaming entertainment that we've ever seen. If that doesn't tell you what's going on, I don't know what does. But seriously, it's not really all doom and gloom because, and I want to reference Big Fry's recent video here who raised a pretty great point, there's an opportunity for the gaming industry to see a massive shift again right now. Like I said before, in the early 2000s to 2010s, big AAA gaming companies needed to prove to the world that they were something worth paying attention to through innovation, pushing the envelope of what was possible. And they did that. And now they don't need to do that anymore. But eventually, people will get tired. They always do. The market follows success. People know what they want, and they will vote with their wallets whether they actually do so consciously or not. And this is where I want to make a really important point. If you actually think games suck now, that modern gaming is just recycled garbage, that the soul or the fun of gaming isn't what it used to be, well, I think you might just not be playing the right games. Some of the greatest successes in gaming in recent years are proof that non-exploitative, inspired, innovative, and passion-driven projects actually sell fantastically. Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate, The Finals, Alan Wake, BattleBit Remastered, Dredge, Resident Evil, Lethal Company. That's a weird-ass list you may have just thought, and that's the point. When you look at gaming as a whole, not just one specific subgenre like the large-scale multiplayer first-person shooter, the last couple of years were some of the best that gaming has seen in a very long time. Inspired, creative, and technically impressive games lovingly crafted by developers with a deep care for their player base have been amazingly received by fans, and actually making tons of money doing so. AAA games are still great, especially in the single-player space. Independent developers can absolutely go toe-to-toe with the largest media corporations in the world. And while a bit of an odd one out, visionary game creators like Hideo Kojima continue to prove that innovation and genre boundary-pushing risk-taking can be lucrative enough to receive continued publishing support. As for the multiplayer shooter space specifically, it's a bit of a different story. Here's the thing about the fall from grace of so many of our beloved shooter game publishers and devs from the 2000s. Those people are all still around, the people who made those games and all the skill and experience that comes with them. Many of them, and I absolutely foresee this continuing to take place with rampant layoffs across the industry, many of them just went and started their own studios. Embark, comprised partly of veteran Battlefield developers, success with The Finals is, I think, a testament to the ability of industry veterans creating new IPs fueled by the now unbridled experience and creativity heretofore held back by the complex and bureaucratic AAA studio systems. The newly formed Mountaintop is working on an upcoming team-based shooter project with veterans from many established competitive and narrative successes. And in general, indie studios, once solely associated with small-scale avant-garde single-player projects, are now the forefront of innovation in the FPS genre. Out of Action, BattleBit, Gray Zone Warfare, Beautiful Light, The Finals and Arc Raiders, Mountaintop's future projects, just to name a few. Now, in reality, every one of these new blockbuster indie studios has the potential to grow into an industry giant and succumb to the issues which come with rapid growth and success. Every huge studio you know once was a small house with big plans. But for now, I think the point is there are a lot of great things happening on the horizon and right now in front of your eyes if you know where to look. I think some huge innovations are just about to hit, and it just feels like a legitimately good time to be into gaming. 2011 was a different era. Possibly the most obvious sentence I've ever spoken, but no matter who you are, you were at that time digesting media in ways so incomparable to the current landscape, it's almost laughable. Flashy visuals, gimmicks, extra functionality, and evolving the usage of tech was the name of the game in the 2010s. Wii, Kinect, PlayStation Move, augmented reality, voice control, none of this stuff had staying power because people's interests and tastes just change. The rise of digital distribution means that more people than ever can enter the playing field both in games development and games criticism. Gone are the days of newspapers, magazines, and Hollywood-level production houses. This is the era of YouTube Shorts, Discord servers, and live stream chats, and that's going to change too in the next 10 to 20 years. With how big and expansive the industry is, as with any industry, there's more bad to be seen, because there's just more in general. But that doesn't mean that the bad is all there is, or that it's even the majority. The changes that have come to the world since the 2010s, culturally, technologically, etc., none of it was what anyone expected. The future we have isn't the one we envisioned. That's always been the case, and it always will be. I see these comments on videos of old Battlefield games, videos on many old games actually, comments on how we didn't know what we had until it was gone. But this sentiment, I think, often fundamentally misses its own point. We don't know what we have until it's gone. It's not that we shouldn't be fond of our pasts or yearn for a better future now, it's just that, possibly, there's something going on right in front of us that we won't appreciate until it's too late. Whether or not we take a step back to realize it, that's just up to each and every one of us. I in no way wish to posit that people being laid off or losing their hope in the game dev industry should look on the bright side or anything like that. That is not the point at all. I'm more trying to say that we, as consumers, have control not only over what kinds of products are catered towards us, but that being blindly critical, negative, or distrusting may just hurt our ability to appreciate the good things the industry is giving us. I can't see exactly where this industry is going. What I can see is that developers with passion and creativity need our support more than ever. Let's give them our money and our encouragement. Let's support those devs doing the things we like to see, and let's judge them fairly and give them patience while doing so. The old days are never coming back, but that doesn't mean that the best days aren't still yet to come. Thanks for watching. And thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video, and remember that you can play for free right now on PC and consoles using the link in the description or in the pinned message down in the comment section to get registered. Any new player or anybody who hasn't played in 6 months or more will get a huge bonus pack with a bunch of special cosmetics, premium vehicles, 7 days of a premium account, 100,000 silver lions, the Eagle of Valor decorator, XP boosts, and more. Make sure you take advantage of all those special bonuses while you can. I want to give you all as huge of a thank you as possible for your support over this last month. My silly little call to action in the Gray Zone Warfare developer interview worked more than I expected. We hit 50,000 subscribers like it was nothing. I don't really know what to say. That was initially my goal for the entirety of this year, and we hit it in just barely over a month. I actually legitimately don't know what my next goal for myself should even be. All I can say is thank you so much for showing that there are people out there who connect with the complex and strange way that I work through my own thoughts on the things I'm interested in. And I'm going to do everything that I can to continue bringing you content that is thoughtful, well-constructed, and insightful as I can. If you did enjoy the video and you haven't, subscribing would of course mean the world to me, but more importantly, leave me a good old comment with the word, no, not salute this time, I'm changing it up, it's cheers this time. Either a comment with the word cheers or the goofy little cheers emoji if you want. Anyway, I appreciate you all for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. I'll see you later. Peace.